Hey guys, in this month's top 5, I'm going to be sharing with you my 5 favorite Ruth Ware books. So, at the time of recording this particular video, Ruth Ware has published 9 books, and I have read all 9 books. And, you know, seriously, I think she is one of the very few authors that I have read every single book. There's many authors here in my room that I own every single one of their books, but I haven't read all of them just yet, you know? So yeah, Ruth Ware is seriously probably one of the very, very few authors that I have read every single book. So I figured after the release of her latest book, which was One Perfect Couple, that was released this year in 2024, I figured, hey, what the hell? This seems like as good a time as any to make a list of my top 5 favorite Ruth Ware books. And it was a bit of a challenge. I kept kind of contemplating what exactly would make the top 5 and what exactly the order would be. And some books were very easy to eliminate because not all of the books are great. There's definitely a couple books that definitely just do not hit the mark whatsoever, and they're pretty bad, but it's like I still appreciate reading them because I think Ruth Ware still had interesting ideas going with them. It's just kind of the execution of those books that didn't work for me. But yeah, let's get into my top 5 favorite Ruth Ware books, you guys. At number 5 is her book that was just recently published here in 2024, and that is One Perfect Couple. So what you need to know about this book, it follows a woman named Lila. Her and her boyfriend unexpectedly get this really crazy opportunity to be contestants on a reality TV show called One Perfect Couple. And it's kind of this mix of like The Bachelorette almost with Survivor, for instance, because the couples are going to be out on a nice fancy island. So they get this opportunity to be on this reality show, and you would think things would go well for the most part, but it does not. It's a Ruth Ware book, obviously. A storm happens while they're at this island, and all of the contestants are stuck on this island. The radio, they don't even know if the radio to the mainland is even actually working. They don't know when the ship that even brought them to the island, they don't know when that ship is even coming back. Yeah, their rations are running low. They're dehydrated. They're starving. They have no electricity. It's pretty shitty. So I really enjoyed this book. Definitely the psychological suspense aspect of the book. What being on an isolated island like this and your supplies are dwindling, what that does to a person psychologically, you know, and what people are capable and willing to do under intense circumstances, because you have the characters that kind of rise above the situation, but then other characters who kind of abuse the situation, because there's like a character in this book who just completely turns the island into like this dictatorship and completely like takes all the supplies for himself and the rations, and kind of makes up all these rules and laws like, if you want this, you got to go do this, you know, and that's no way to do anything when everybody is suffering. So I love the psychological suspense aspect of this book, and yeah, the fact that this is supposed to be like a reality TV show, that's really kind of a very, very small portion of this book, just a really small chunk at the beginning. Really, this whole thing is about the isolation after the storm and being on this island. And yeah, it's definitely a book about, it's a commentary on reality shows, and it's also a commentary on those type of reality shows that do deal with like couples and kind of the ideals we think of when we're watching shows like that. And yeah, it's also very heavily a commentary on like abusive relationships. And the thing is, all of these contestants are, a good majority of them are people who are like influencers or actors. So there's also a big, huge commentary on that, you know, people who put themselves willingly in the spotlight and what that does to a person. And like the image that you see, a lot of times that is not the real true image. Sometimes there could be something really deep and dark lurking in the background, and someone may have beliefs that you do not personally believe in yourself, you know. So there was a lot of really fascinating stuff going on in this book, I found. At number 4, The Turn of the Key. So, what you got to know about this book, it follows a young woman who gets this opportunity to be a nanny for a pair of children, and she's whisked away off into the Scottish Highlands, which sounds good and all, and the house that she arrives to and the family that she arrives to. On the surface, the house looks pretty cool and awesome because it's like supposed to be a really hip and modern house that's full of like smart technology, if you will. And yet the family, they seem like this perfect ideal family. It doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with this family, you know? So the parents kind of get out of the picture fairly early in this book, and she's left alone with the children. You know, that's part of her job, to be a nanny, obviously. So she's left alone with these children, and things do kind of start just quickly going downhill. At times it feels like the house is out to just get her. Things start malfunctioning. What is going on exactly? Is someone messing with something? And then on top of that, the children who she thought would be like all sweet and lovable and everything, they're like little monsters, and they start like harassing and doing terrible things to her. I really enjoyed this book. If you can't tell from the title, it's supposed to be kind of like a loose retelling of The Turn of the Screw by, is it Henry James? I think it's Henry James. I've never read that book, so I can't really comment on how much of an adaptation this is to that, but yeah, if you've seen something like The Haunting of Bly Manor, for instance, which that is in itself an adaptation of the Turn of the Screw, it's kind of similar to that regard. I really enjoyed this book as well, the twists and turns, and again, Ruth Ware just excelling so much at like psychological suspense, because this young woman, she's coming in here for this nanny position that's paying her absolutely fabulously, and it's just terrible, and it's like, I need to get out of here, you know? So yeah, another fantastic book full of really great twists and turns. And on top of that, this is not a spoiler. This is not a spoiler because the synopsis downright tells you this at the very beginning. Plus, like, the very first page of this book, you find this out. Our main protagonist, she's actually in prison at the moment because she is being accused and blamed for the murder of one of these children. So that's kind of the big thing that's going on in this book. How do we get to the death of this child? And is our protagonist, is she actually responsible for that? At number 3, The Death of Mrs. Westway. Boy, oh boy, you guys, I do sure love me dysfunctional family drama and grand sprawling ancestral family estates. Just give that to me. I'm a sucker for that sort of thing. So this book follows a young woman. I'm going to pretty much be repeating that in every single one of these books. A young woman. That tends to be Ruth Ware's kind of idyllic narrator. This book follows a young woman named Hal. Hal actually does like tarot card readings off on the side to make ends meet. Yeah, she's practically living in poverty to some degree. So here's the thing. One day, Hal gets a letter inviting her to the Westway home because Mrs. Westway has died. The thing is, though, Hal, she doesn't know how she's even kind of getting this letter to begin with, because her own grandparents have been dead for like 20 years or so, and she feels like there's a mistake that she has received this letter because she's not quite sure how she even connects to this family to begin with. But Hal, being so desperate for money, and it seems really obvious that there is going to be a will that is read and money is going to be given out to people, out of desperation, Hal goes to the reading of this will at the Westaway estate, and yeah, just to get some money, and she feels super guilty about that whole thing because she's worried people are going to kind of find out that she feels like a fraud, you know. So this whole book takes place at this ancestral home, and we meet the Westaway family, who are just full of all sorts of character types, for the love of God. And yeah, some of them Hal gets along with, some she doesn't, and yes, you definitely get the idea. There are definitely people here for the money. They are here for something. And yeah, this book has some really fascinating, interesting twists and turns that when you get to the end of this book, I wouldn't blame you if you're still really confused because I remember reading this book still being terribly confused about certain things, and I literally had to go back and reread certain passages and like reread them from a different perspective because I'm still really confused. So yeah, even to this day, I'm still kind of a little confused about this book, but it still didn't like deter my enjoyment of how much I loved this book, because I still found it to be just so captivating and well written, and yeah, once again, psychological suspense. At number 2, The It Girl. I'm going to be honest, you guys. When I first got this book, I thought this was going to be one of those Ruth Ware books that wasn't really going to appeal to me and I wasn't going to like that much. But I was very highly pleasantly surprised with this book. As you can see, it's number 2 on my list. This was just absolutely pleasantly surprising, and kind of the direction it went and kind of some of the larger thematic things it was talking about. This follows a young woman named Hannah who, a decade prior, her roommate at university was brutally murdered. So here, 10 years later, after that brutal murder of her roommate, the man who was convicted of killing her roommate, he has suddenly died in prison, but he was always really adamant about the fact that he never killed this young woman. And he even till his dying breath, he maintained the fact that, hey, I never killed this woman. And Hannah has always kind of felt guilty about that. Did she, because she is the one who put him in prison. Her witness testimony is what got this guy imprisoned for life. So now this man who was convicted for the murder, he has died, and a journalist has kind of gathered some new information that really seems like, hey, I don't think this guy actually killed your roommate. So this puts a lot of guilt and pressure on Hannah. Did I wrongfully convict this guy? What if it was someone in our circle of friends? That's kind of the bulk of this novel, is Hannah realizing that someone in their friend group back in university, someone in their friend group seems to be hiding something. And one of them is probably the actual killer of her roommate. So the really great thing about this book, kind of the clever back and forth of the book, it's a constant back and forth between 10 years ago at university and Hannah and her time with her friend group and with her roommate. It goes back and forth there, and then also in the present, what Hannah is trying to do to try and find the correct killer, bring somebody to justice. And as far as like some of the more thematic elements of this book go, I really appreciated what Ruth Ware was doing in this book. Once again, it is psychological suspense, obviously, but the young woman who is murdered 10 years prior, Hannah's roommate, this is definitely a book that explores female murder victims, how media treats female murder victims, that it's kind of one or the other. A woman is either kind of put on this pedestal and she's seen as a perfect saint, or she's put not on a pedestal, but she's like deemed as like irrational and emotional and crazy and like a whore or something, So this book is really tackling some interesting things with how media portrays female murder victims, especially. And people are just human, people are just human at the end of the day, with human vulnerabilities and weaknesses. And yeah, Hannah's roommate was not a perfect person, but like the media kind of portrayed her like she was this absolute perfect angel, when in reality she kind of wasn't, So this book is doing really fascinating things, and like putting you, the reader, in some truly uncomfortable places, especially with how you're supposed to feel about the guy that was convicted for the murder. Because should you sympathize with this guy? It does. It puts you in some really awkward, uncomfortable places that are really, truly thought-provoking, I think. And at number 1, The Woman in Cabin 10. This was my very first Ruth Ware book, which was actually her second published book. Somehow I totally skipped over her very first book, and I went to this. But ever since I read the second book, I have read every single book since, and yeah, I went back and reread the first book too. What you need to know about this book: it follows a woman, a female journalist who writes for like a travel magazine, and she gets this opportunity to board a luxury cruise liner and to write about her experience being on this luxury cruise liner. Well, here's the thing. One night, while she's trying to go to bed and whatnot, she hears like a commotion in the cabin next door to her. She knows there's another young woman in the cabin next to her, so she hears a commotion. She goes over there, but here's the twist, you guys. There's there's no one in the room. So when, I guess they're going through, what would it be, the manifest, I suppose, she comes to find out that there's actually no one who was in that room. But she knows for a fact there was a woman in that cabin. So where did she go? Why is she not on the manifest? And what appealed to me so much about this book, once again, psychological suspense, as Ruth Ware does so well, but what I truly liked, I'm a sucker for books like this that take place like out at sea, because you're on a ship like this, and it is truly isolated. There is nowhere to go. It's just this ship, and if there's a problem, you're kind of stuck with that problem. So I loved kind of the premise of this book, being stuck on this ship, and that our main character, she feels like a murder has happened, but no one believes her. And yeah, we already know from the get-go when we're introduced to our main character that she's full of like a lot of anxiety. So there's a degree of her being an unreliable narrator because of her anxiety at times. So a lot of people kind of start blaming her, like, oh, you're just being paranoid. You think someone's been murdered, but no one has been murdered. But yeah, you, the reader, it's like you're much more sympathetic to her, and you kind of naturally believe her more. And that's the thing too on this ship. If something has happened and someone is trying to hide something, it's like you are in this isolated situation, but there's still quite a number of places people can hide on this ship, you know. Where are people kind of hiding and trying to get behind the scenes and do things, you know? So I loved this book, kind of just the sheer isolation of it and the suspense, and it was really thrilling. I loved it. So you guys, that is it for my top 5 favorite Ruth Ware books. In the comments below, do you guys, if you have read all of Ruth Ware's books, what would be your personal top 5? And did I leave your favorite off this list? Just let me know. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.